The council chamber was vast, like a cathedral built from metal and light. 1,000 banners of alien civilizations hung from its walls, swaying gently in the artificial air. Delegates of every species sat in their high seats, their eyes sharp, their voices murmuring with judgment. In the center of the chamber, under the harsh glow of white light, stood the representatives of Earth. Humanity was on trial. The charges were read slowly, almost cruelly. The council accused humans of being reckless, of being violent, of carrying the scent of war wherever they went. They were called destroyers of balance, a danger to the fragile peace that the galaxy claimed to hold. Every word was heavy. Every word was like a stone thrown against the human delegation. Yet the humans did not bow their heads. They stood firm, silent, waiting for the judgment they already knew was coming. The eldest of the alien judges, a tall and feathered being with silver eyes, rose from his seat. His voice carried through the chamber like the toll of a bell. "Humans of Terra," he declared, "the Council has weighed your nature and found it dangerous. You bring conflict where there is harmony. You bring fire where there is calm. Your kind is not fit to sit among us. For the safety of the galaxy, you are hereby banished. You will leave the core worlds. You will surrender your rights. You will be cast into the outer void. So it is spoken. So it shall be done." A hush fell over the chamber. Some alien delegates smiled in quiet satisfaction. Others shook their heads in pity. A few, very few, looked away in shame. The sentence was clear. Humanity was no longer part of the council. For a long moment no one moved. No one spoke. The silence was heavier than the judgment itself. Then the human ambassador stepped forward. His face was tired, his uniform plain. He carried no weapon, no crown, no armor, only the weight of billions who had placed their hope in him. His voice, when it came, was steady and calm. "You call us dangerous," he said. "Perhaps you are right. We are a species of fire. We fight, we claw, we struggle. But understand this. Everything we have we built from nothing. Our home was not gentle. Our oceans tried to drown us, our skies tried to starve us, our earth tried to bury us. But still we survived." His words cut through the chamber like a blade. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. "You think exile will break us," the ambassador continued. "But exile is not new to us. Every storm we have faced has tried to cast us down, and every time we rose stronger. He paused, his gaze sweeping the council seats. If you cast us out, we will endure. If you banish us, we will build. If you send us to the darkness, we will bring our own light. For a moment the chamber was silent again. Only the sound of distant machinery filled the air. The council delegates looked at each other uncertain. This was not the response they had expected. Then from the back of the chamber laughter rang out. Harsh, mocking laughter from one of the alien envoys. Soon others joined in. They laughed at the boldness of the humans, at the idea that exiles could survive the cold void beyond mapped space. The ambassador did not answer their laughter. He only straightened his shoulders, bowed once with dignity, and walked away. His fellow humans followed him, heads high, eyes burning. The council recorded the decree. Humanity was erased from the registry of recognized civilizations. Their banners were stripped from the walls. Their names were cut from the archives. To the galaxy they no longer existed, but the humans remembered. On the long walk back to their ships, no one spoke. The silence was not of defeat, but of iron resolve. They were leaving the council's shining worlds behind, leaving the comfort of trade and treaties, leaving the illusion of belonging. The stars ahead were cold, wild, uncharted. To many species, the void beyond was death. To humans, it was simply another frontier. As their ships rose from the council's homeworld, the ambassador looked once more at the glowing cities below. He whispered, too soft for any alien ear to hear, "You wanted to rid yourselves of us. You wanted us gone, but you will remember this day. One day the galaxy will remember." And with that, the fleet of humanity vanished into the dark. The council thought they had ended the story of Earth. They did not realize they had only written the first chapter. The human fleet drifted away from the core worlds like shadows leaving the firelight. Behind them, the great cities of the council shone like jewels. But those lights no longer belonged to humanity. The decree of exile was final. No port would open for them. No world would welcome them. They were outcasts now, pushed into the cold arms of the void. At first there was silence among the Terran ships. It was the silence of anger, of grief, of betrayal. Children asked their parents why the aliens had turned against them. The parents had no easy answers. Soldiers clenched their fists, remembering how they had bled beside those same species in wars long past. Scientists whispered among themselves, already wondering how long their supplies would last. The fleet was not small, but it was not great either. There were colony ships, freighters, old cruisers kept alive with patched engines. They carried people from every nation of Earth, families, engineers, farmers, soldiers, and dreamers. Each ship was filled with the weight of exile. For months they traveled. Every world they approached turned them away. Some sent warning signals. Others threatened fire if the humans came closer. No one wished to share food, water, or land with the banished. Humanity was marked, and the mark of the council was heavy. On the colony ship Hope's Horizon, Captain Elias Morgan walked the corridors at night, unable to sleep. He heard the cries of children. He saw the empty shelves where medicine had run out. He listened to the quiet weeping of old men and women who thought they would die among the stars. Each sound was a reminder that their people had been abandoned. But despair was not the only thing growing. Slowly, a fire began to kindle. When they reached a dead moon at the edge of mapped space, the humans stopped. It was a barren place covered in dust and stone with no air and no oceans. The council would have called it worthless. The humans called it a beginning. Tents became shelters. Shelters became domes. Domes became cities. The children learned to play under the harsh light of artificial suns. Farmers learned to grow food in soil that had never known life before. Engineers built machines from scrap and steel, turning broken wreckage into tools. They were not comfortable. They were not safe. But they were alive. Generations of struggle had taught humanity one lesson above all others. Survival was not a gift. It was something you fought for. It was something you carved out with blood, sweat, and stubbornness. Other outcasts began to drift toward them. A few alien species, broken or unwanted by the council, found their way to human colonies. The council's laws had no power in exile space, and those who were tired of bowing to it sought refuge under the Terran banner. And humanity did not turn them away. We know what it means to be cast out, the settlers said. If you will work, if you will stand with us, then you have a home. The human settlements grew, not quickly, not easily, but with steady determination. Where other species would have withered, the humans adapted. Where others saw a wasteland, humans saw opportunity. Children grew into young men and women who had never seen Earth yet carried the fire of Earth in their hearts. They were raised on stories of betrayal, of banishment, of the day the council stripped away their place among the stars. Those stories became lessons. Lessons became vows. Never trust the council, the teacher said. Never depend on others to save you, the parent said. Stand together, or fall apart, the soldier said. And so the people stood together. Years passed. Small victories piled upon each other. A mine carved into a frozen asteroid. A trade network built between distant colonies. A new class of ship forged in the dark, heavier and stronger than anything the council thought possible. Each triumph whispered the same truth. Exile had not broken humanity. Exile had forged them. But in quiet moments the elders remembered Earth. They remembered the blue skies and green oceans that now lay far beyond reach. They remembered what it felt like to belong. That memory hurt, but it also gave them strength. On the colony moon, in a small gathering, Captain Elias Morgan spoke to his people. His voice was tired but firm, carried through old speakers across the settlement. They thought they cast us into death, he said. But look at us now. We live, we endure. And we will keep enduring. The council has taken everything from us, but they cannot take away our will. They cannot take away our fire. We will survive the void because survival is who we are. The crowd listened, silent at first, then began to cheer. Men and women lifted their children into the air. Soldiers raised their fists. Engineers lifted their tools like weapons. In that moment, despair gave way to something greater. Hope. The council believed exile would erase humanity. But in the far dark, humanity was only beginning to write its true story. The first true miracle of exile happened not on a planet, but in the frozen belt of Nidra 9. It was a place of endless shadows. A graveyard of drifting rocks and frozen dust. The council had mapped it once centuries ago, then dismissed it as worthless. To them it was nothing but ice and stone, but to the humans, it was treasure. In the heart of those asteroids, miners found veins of iron, nickel, and rare alloys thicker than anything on Earth. The first pickaxes struck stone, and the echoes carried through the tunnels like a song of rebirth. Humanity had found its foundation. The miners worked with bleeding hands and tired eyes. Their drills were old, their machines barely held together, but the people refused to stop. Children carried rocks. Engineers patched broken equipment with scraps. Every small load of ore pulled from the dark was greeted with cheers because every rock meant survival. From the ore came steel. From steel came tools. From tools came something greater. The first factory domes rose from the surface of a barren moon nearby. Smoke curled into the thin air. The hum of furnaces sang louder than the silence of exile. For the first time since banishment, humanity was not simply surviving. They were building. The council had sleek ships of glass and gold, elegant and delicate. Humanity's ships were nothing like them. Terran engineers built their vessels from thick plates bolted and welded with care. They did not care for elegance. They cared for strength. The first corvettes rolled out of the yards heavy and scarred, armed with railguns and missile pods. They were not pretty, but they were alive. They bore names like Iron Dawn and Defiance. When the crews touched their steel hulls, they felt pride that could not be broken. It was not just about ships. The steel became cities. The miners and their families built walls of iron around their settlements so no storm could take them. They built towers and bridges, machines that worked even in the cruelest cold. Slowly, exile space began to shine with human lights. In the markets of the colony domes, one could hear laughter again. Children ran between crates of metal and wires, their hands stained with grease. Farmers grew food under artificial suns, trading with engineers for tools. Life was no longer only about survival. It was about living. But even as they built, they remembered. Every piece of steel was forged with anger and memory. Every ship carried a story of betrayal. Humanity did not forget the Council's sentence. They did not forgive the laughter that echoed in the chamber of judgment. And so their creations carried a message. We will not be broken. On the mining moon of Helios 3, a small group of alien wanderers arrived. They were thin, starving, cast out by the Council for being useless. The humans gave them food and shelter. In return, the aliens offered skills and knowledge. Together they built greater machines. Soon more outcasts came. Smugglers, traders, refugees from forgotten wars. and humanity welcomed them, not because of kindness alone, but because they understood. They too had been cast out. "Stand with us," the humans said, "and no one will ever cast you out again." The throne of steel was not only for humans. It was for all who had been rejected. Years passed. The fleets grew larger. Human shipyards glowed bright against the black void. Dreadnoughts began to take shape, their frames like mountains drifting in orbit. The council far away dismissed the reports. They believed humans could never rise again. They thought exile had caged them. But in the silence of the dark, humanity was sharpening its claws. On the anniversary of their banishment, Captain Elias Morgan stood before the workers of Nidra 9. Behind him, the newest warship rested in its dock, its hull shining with fresh steel. "Look at what they said we could never have," he declared. "They thought we would fade into the dark. Instead, we have built fire in the dark. They thought we would starve. Instead, we have forged iron from stone. This ship, this steel, this throne we are building, it is not just for us. It is for every voice the council tried to silence, for every people they abandoned, for every child they thought would never grow. We are proof that exile is not the end. Exile is the beginning." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices echoing across the steel corridors. Men and women pounded their fists against metal walls, their chants filling the air. "We endure. We build. We rise." The first steel had been forged. It was only the beginning. Humanity had turned exile into a forge, and in that forge, they were shaping something the galaxy had never seen before. And deep in their hearts, they carried a single promise. The council would one day see what had been born in the dark. The galaxy began to whisper. At first, it was only rumors, small stories carried by frightened traders and wandering merchants. They spoke of human ships in the dark, armored giants that moved silently across the void. They spoke of colonies that had been attacked by pirates, only for the pirates to vanish without a trace. They spoke of outposts that claimed they saw shadows of warships watching them from the edge of their sensors, ships marked with the banner of Earth. The council dismissed the rumors. "Exiles do not build fleets," they said. "Exiles do not win battles." But the whispers grew louder. On the human colonies, the truth was clear. Humanity had grown teeth, and they were no longer afraid to use them. The throne of steel was not just an idea now. It was a shield and a sword. It began with the raiders. Pirates, emboldened by the Council's decree, thought human exiles would be easy prey. They attacked the mining stations around Nidra 9, hoping for easy plunder. But they found something else waiting. The Iron Dawn and Defiance rose from the shadows, their railguns primed, their engines burning bright. The battle was quick, brutal, and final. The raiders had expected helpless victims. Instead, they faced predators. Not a single pirate ship escaped. Word spread fast. The Council ships that wandered too close to human space also began to disappear. At first, the Council believed it was pirates or natural accidents. But then, survivors began to whisper of encounters they could not explain. They were Terran ships. One shaken captain reported. Black hulls covered in scars. They came out of nowhere. They fired without hesitation. Their weapons cut through our shields as if they were nothing. They let us live only to carry their message, and what was that message? We remember. Every encounter ended with those two words transmitted across the void. It was a warning and a promise. The Council grew uneasy. Delegates began to argue in their chambers. Some demanded immediate action against the humans. Others insisted it was impossible. Humans could not have built such power in exile. They were supposed to be struggling to survive, not building war machines. But the evidence was undeniable. Outposts burned. Fleets vanished. The exiles were no longer weak. Meanwhile, in human colonies, life continued to grow. The steel cities thrived and the fleets expanded. But always, always the memory of betrayal burned in their hearts. The children who once cried when they were cast out had now grown into soldiers and engineers. They wore armor made from the steel of Nidra 9, and they looked to the stars with determination. Among them was Commander Arya Solon, a young officer who had never set foot on Earth. She had been born in exile, raised among the cold domes of Helios 3. Her people had told her stories of blue skies and oceans she would never see. She did not carry the grief of losing Earth. She carried the fire of building something new. To her, the Council was not a memory. It was an enemy. Under her command, human patrol fleets became hunters. They stalked the edges of Council territory, striking quickly, then vanishing back into the dark. They took resources, rescued refugees, and spread the same message again and again. We have not forgotten. We are not gone. The galaxy began to call it the Shadow War. It was not a full war yet. It was whispers and strikes, shadows and scars. But to those who saw the black banners of humanity, it was a storm gathering on the horizon. Still the council tried to laugh. They told themselves it was nothing. But laughter could not hide fear. Fear spread like cracks through the chamber walls. One night in the steel halls of Nidra 9, Commander Arya stood before her fleet. Behind her, dreadnoughts loomed like mountains of iron, engines humming low. She spoke not with anger, but with cold certainty. They banished us into the dark, she said. They thought we would die. But we are still here. We are stronger now than ever before. And soon the galaxy will see us not as exiles, not as shadows, but as the storm that will sweep across their skies. Her words lit a fire in every heart. The crews pounded their fists against steel, their chants echoing, "We rise! We rise! We rise!" And in the silence of space the shadows moved again. Human ships disappeared into the void, waiting, watching. The throne of steel was no longer only a dream. It was becoming a kingdom forged in secrecy, sharpened in exile. The council had tried to erase humanity. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous. A people who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. And the Shadow War was only the beginning. The first open battle came at Kelnar 5, a lonely world near the border between exile space and council territory. It was not a great planet, just a dusty trade hub with one station orbiting above. But to the council it was a chance to send a warning. To humanity it became something greater. The place where the shadows stepped into the light. The council had grown nervous with the whispers of the Shadow War. Too many patrols lost. Too many traders spoke of Terran fleets. Delegates in the chamber shouted for action. Crush them before they spread further, one species demanded. Remind them they are exiles, nothing more. And so the council sent a fleet. 30 warships, sleek, silver, and proud, jumped into the Kelnar system. Their commander, Admiral Vare of the Halari, was certain it would be an easy task. The humans had no recognized fleets, no allies, no official power, In her mind, this was nothing more than chasing pests from the border. At first, the human trade station above Kelnar looked defenseless. Old freighters floated nearby, their engines dim. Civilians rushed to shelter. The Council fleet moved forward, weapons armed, ready to fire. Then the shadows moved. From the dark side of Kelnar's moons, ships emerged. Black hulls scarred by war, railguns gleaming, missile bays opening like the jaws of predators. The Iron Dawn led them, followed by the Defiance, the Vanguard, and dozens more. Humanity's fleet had come, Admiral Vera sneered. Primitive designs, she said. Ugly, heavy, they will break easily. She ordered her fleet forward. The first clash was sudden and brutal. Human railguns roared, slamming slugs of dense metal at speeds that cracked Council shields like glass. Missiles streaked across the void, weaving between laser fire, striking with explosions that shook the heavens. The Council ships returned fire, their beams slicing across the dark. But where their weapons were meant to pierce light armor, they struck against walls of steel. Human ships shook, their hulls dented, scorched, but they did not break. Inside the Iron Dawn, Commander Arya Solon stood at the command deck. Her eyes burned with cold fire. "Target their flagships," she ordered. "Show them exile is not weakness. Show them what we have become." Her crew obeyed with steel in their hearts. The Iron Dawn drove forward, railguns thundering, tearing through the elegant Hilari cruiser that dared to block its path. One by one, Council ships began to fall. Admiral Vera's confidence shattered. Her fleet was trained for ceremony, for control, not for survival. They had never faced enemies who fought as if every battle was the last. They had never faced humans who had built war from exile and despair. The fight dragged into hours. The void burned with wreckage and fire. Council crews panicked as they saw their ships crumble under the relentless assault. The humans did not fight with grace. They fought with fury. They fought like predators starved too long. When at last the Council fleet broke, Admiral Vera gave the order to retreat. Her ships limped away, engines burning, their once proud hulls scarred. Of 30 warships, only half escaped, and the humans did not chase them. Instead, they broadcast a single message across every channel, to every listening ear in the galaxy. We are not gone. We are not broken. You cast us into the dark, and in the dark we forged steel. If you come again, you will not leave. This is our promise. This is our war. The message spread like fire. Refugees cheered. Pirates trembled. Traitors whispered of a new power rising. The council, humiliated, tried to silence the story, but it was too late. At Kelnar 5, the first clash had been decided. Humanity had stood against the might of the council and endured. They had not begged. They had not hidden. They had fought openly, and they had won. In the aftermath, the Terran fleet returned to their colonies bearing both victory and scars. The ships were damaged, crews exhausted, but the people celebrated them as heroes. For the first time since exile, the humans felt the taste of triumph. Commander Arya Solon looked out across the stars from her ship's bridge. The wreckage of the Council fleet still floated in the dark. She knew this was only the beginning. They will come again, she whispered, in greater numbers, in greater strength. But so will we. We are not finished. We are only beginning. The throne of steel was no longer just a vision in the shadows. It had been tested in fire, and it had endured. Humanity had revealed itself to the galaxy, not as victims, not as beggars, but as warriors. And the council now understood the truth they had tried so hard to deny. The exiles had returned. The victory at Kelnar 5 spread through the galaxy like fire on dry grass. What was once only whispers about Terran shadows became undeniable truth. Humanity was not just surviving in exile, they were rising. And with every scar, every battle, every forged ship, they were becoming stronger than anyone could have imagined. The council tried to control the story. They declared the battle a minor skirmish, nothing more. They claimed the humans had ambushed their fleet like criminals. But their lies could not hide the wreckage. Too many traitors had seen council ships burning. Too many refugees had watched human war banners light the skies. And those refugees began to seek out the humans. Ships carrying the desperate and the forgotten started arriving in exile space. Broken fleets of alien wanderers limped into Terran harbors, carrying people with hollow eyes and empty hands. They had no homes, no safety, no place among the council. They came expecting rejection, but the humans welcomed them. On Helios 3, A council of Terran leaders stood before a crowd of new arrivals. Beside them stood Commander Arya Solon, still scarred from the Battle of Kelnar. Her voice carried across the gathered masses. "You were cast out as we were," she said. "You were abandoned as we were. But here you will not be refused. If you will work, if you will stand, then you belong. The council may have banished us, but we will build a home greater than theirs, not of marble and glass, but of iron and steel. Together we will forge a throne they can never break." The crowd erupted with cries of hope. Aliens and humans alike cheered, their voices mixing into one roar. For the first time, the throne of steel became more than words. It became a vision, and that vision spread. Terran colonies expanded across dead moons and empty worlds. Shipyards bloomed like forests of metal, their lights burning bright against the dark. The throne of steel was built with each new hull that left the docks, each city that rose from dust, each alliance made with the broken and the brave. Human engineers designed ships unlike any the Council had seen before. They were not elegant. They were not delicate. They were machines of survival, of war, of purpose. Their armor was thick, their weapons brutal. They carried scars proudly, patched with steel instead of polished away. When the first dreadnought, the Eternal Resolve, was completed, its unveiling was more than a ceremony. It was a declaration. The massive vessel floated above Helios 3, its hull layered with black and silver, its cannons bristling like the teeth of some great beast. Tens of thousands gathered below to watch. The crowd stood silent as the ship activated its engines, the sound echoing across the steel city. Then, as the vessel rose into the stars, they erupted in cheers. Children cried. Veterans saluted. Refugees wept. The throne of steel was no longer just an idea. It was alive. In the council chambers, fear spread like poison. Delegates shouted over each other. "They were supposed to die," one cried. "They were supposed to be forgotten." But the truth was plain. Humanity, once banished, now commanded fleets. Humanity, once weak, now drew allies. Humanity, once exiled, now ruled a growing empire. Still, the Terrans did not forget why they fought. Every leader, every soldier, every worker remembered the day they were laughed out of the council chamber. They remembered the humiliation, the exile, the pain, and they carried that memory like a blade. Commander Arius Solon stood on the bridge of the Iron Dawn, watching the fleet assemble around Helios 3. Rows upon rows of steel warships drifted in formation, their lights glowing like a constellation born of fire. Beside them flew ships of other species, the broken and abandoned who had chosen to stand with humanity. "This is our throne," Arya whispered. "Not built of gold or words, but of steel and blood. A throne for those who will never bow again." Her words were carried in recordings across the colonies. They became a chant, a promise repeated in workshops, in barracks, in homes. Never bow again. The throne of steel grew larger with every passing year. Not just a military power, but a home for the lost. Not just a fleet, but a nation. The council, once unchallenged, now faced something they had never imagined. An empire forged in exile, carried on iron wings. And still, humanity's message burned across the stars. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We rise, the throne was ready, the storm was near, and the galaxy had yet to see the true might of those it had cast aside. The galaxy had been waiting for this day. For years the council had dismissed the humans as a distant nuisance, a noise in the void. But now their fleets blotted out the stars. Their allies numbered in the hundreds of species. Their throne of steel was no longer rumor. It was fact, and it was coming. The council gathered in panic. They filled their grand chamber with shouts and fear. Some called for negotiation. Others demanded total war. But their unity was gone, cracked by terror. They had thought humanity broken. Instead, they had made them strong. And humanity was no longer coming alone. On the edge of council space, a storm of engines ignited. Thousands of ships, human and alien, aligned into one vast armada. Their hulls glimmered with scars and steel. Their banners, black and silver, carried one message: never bow again. At the center of the armada was the dreadnought, Eternal Resolve. Its size dwarfed every vessel the council had ever built. On its bridge stood Commander Arius Solon, eyes cold, jaw set. Around her stood soldiers of a dozen species sworn to her cause. She spoke with quiet fire. Years ago they banished us. They left us to die. They thought we would fade. Instead we rose. Today we do not come as beggars. We come as judgment. The fleet moved. The first clash was brutal. The Council's border defenses cracked under the assault. Stations that once seemed untouchable burned in the black. The Council had grown lazy, soft behind their walls of privilege. Humanity had grown sharp, forged in exile. Every battle was swift, every strike merciless, but humanity did not conquer alone. Their allies fought beside them. Once forgotten species now unleashed their fury, no longer silent under the Council's heel. The throne of steel was not built only of Terran iron. It was built of every soul the Council had cast aside. As the war spread, worlds surrendered before the Armada even arrived. Council citizens whispered in fear. The exiles have returned. The humans are coming. At last the throne of steel reached the Council's heart, Elendor Prime, the shining jewel of their empire. Towering spires of glass and crystal gleamed beneath the twin suns. For centuries the Council had ruled from those halls, untouchable and arrogant. Now their skies darkened with Terran ships. The battle was short. Council fleets broke before the relentless advance. On the surface, their grand defenses collapsed under bombardment. And then, as the palace trembled, Commander Arya Solon descended with her guard. The council chamber, once filled with smug laughter, was now heavy with fear. The delegates sat frozen as Arya walked between them, armored in black steel, her footsteps echoing like judgment itself. One counselor, trembling, tried to speak. Humanity. We can still make peace. We can share power. We can... Arya's gaze silenced him. Her voice was cold as iron. Peace? You gave us no peace. You gave us exile. You gave us starvation, death, and war. You took from us every right and every home. And now you beg? She raised her hand, pointing to the massive fleet outside the chamber windows. Look at what you created. You cast us into the fire and we emerged steel. You thought you banished us, but you built us. This throne you see before you is yours as much as ours. Born of your cruelty, raised by your arrogance. The chamber shook with silence. No one dared answer. Then Arya spoke the words that would echo through history. The age of the council is over. The age of the throne begins. Her soldiers tore down the banners of the council and raised the black and silver sigil of the throne of steel. Across Elendor Prime, citizens watched in awe as the flag unfurled above the once mighty palace. For the first time, the galaxy saw a new power rise. Not fragile, not corrupt, but forged in survival. And so, the throne of steel was complete. It was not made of gold, nor of fragile glass towers. It was made of ships, of scars, of voices joined in defiance. It was built by humans, but carried by every exile who had been forgotten. It was a throne that stood not on fear, but on unbreakable will. Years later, children of many species would stand beneath that flag. They would learn the story of humanity's banishment, of their rise, of their unyielding spirit. And they would know the truth. The galaxy had cast them out, but humanity had returned, not as servants, not as victims, but as rulers on a throne of steel.